I wish I knew karate. I wish I could afford my hobbies. I wish that I could only flow like how my thoughts be. I wish I had my wishes. I wish for righteous visions. I wish for 100-gallon tanks full of tropical fishes.
What's up, my Wizards dev? SBMTG down there. We do magic stuff on YouTube. Here's the thing. Actually, case in point, here's a deck I've been trying to present to you for like a month now. Just I keep doing other stuff and stuff keeps getting in the way, and I push this back. But I'm finally going to give it to you. This is Black-White Eldrazi. As a consequence of having been in the process of building this deck now for a very long time, it feels like, I think we've got it honed down to about where it needs to be in its final form, which is not a thing I usually say. But if I were going to sleeve something up for the Grand Prix, this is probably what I'd take. It's probably because I'm quite well versed with the deck at this point. I've been playing a lot of it, but also because I think it is legitimately a very powerful deck. So let's take a look. We'll start by telling you the 15 creatures in this deck, and we'll start with probably the weakest card in the deck, but in my experience, you have to play it. It really ties the room together. There's 3 copies of Hedron Crawler in the deck. This actually does a lot of things for us. It's the only 2-drop creature, but a fine 2-drop it is. It helps us play things like Thought-Knot Seer, and it ramps us into Thought-Knot Seer on turn 3. Very important. Also helps us activate Eldrazi Displacers. Very important. And last but not at all least, this can put us a turn closer to something like Sorin or Avacyn than we would normally be. I mean, a turn 5 Sorin is much better than a turn 6 Sorin. Altogether, he's obviously not the strongest piece in the deck, but it really does an awful lot of things for us just on turn 2. So I've really liked the inclusion of Hedron Crawler. There's obviously other stuff you could do, but I like to be a turn closer to certain big cards, and I like to play a Thought-Knot Seer on turn 3. I also like that it's an extra source of colorless mana. Just the thing does a lot. We're playing 3 copies of Eldrazi Displacer because every creature in the deck outside of Hedron Crawler can be displaced for some form of value or another. Obviously, this can also save our creatures from spot removal, which is always really good. Just Eldrazi Displacer is a powerful card in multiple formats. Same thing with Thought-Knot Seer, which is really its best friend. I was pretty happy to see that Displacer tricks were widely represented at the Pro Tour. I see a lot of people trying to do things with that, including a Mardu deck that I really liked. The Red-White Goggles deck, you know, there are a lot of exploitation of Eldrazi Displacer. Just premium creature in the format right now, and great with anything with ETB effects, which is more or less all we're playing. We're running 2 copies of Wasteland Strangler in the deck. We don't need to run a ton of copies of this because we've got a bunch of removal, but still a pretty good creature when it can kill a guy and put something on the battlefield of your own. Always a good shot, and this is a really good way to follow up something like Declaration in Stone. Second turn Declaration in Stone, third turn this guy, and suddenly you've killed 2 other dudes and you got a creature, the only creature on the board. That's pretty good. Just Wasteland Strangler, decent way to set yourself up into the mid game, and there are multiple turn 2 ways of exiling something either from their hand or from off the board. Now let's get into the heavy hitters. 4 copies of Thought-Knot Seer, and you need all 4, honestly. Just a premium creature in the deck. It's sort of, I was going to say it's the Vendilion Click of Standard, but in some ways it's like the Vendilion Click of Modern. Like, people love playing this card in Modern, too. It can really remove some very important cards from their hand. For pretty much the rest of the game, you can lock them down if that's your MO. And the whole time, you've got a huge, beefy 4-power dude on your side of the board that's resistant to all kinds of removal. So, do like the thing, and sure, it can still die to your Grasp of Darkness, it can still die to, you know, Declaration in Stone, but they can't kill it with an ultimate price. That's pretty cool. They can't kill it with Fiery Impulse or Fiery Temper, so it is resistant to some forms of removal, but still dies to Grasp and Languish. That said, it's still probably one of the best 4-mana plays in the format, full of amazing 4-mana plays. I don't know if you've noticed how many incredible 4-mana cards there are in the format right now, but good things started 4. For the most part, really good things started 4. And this is absolutely one of them, especially with a Displacer on the board. It's just, it gets disgusting quick. Speaking of gross creatures, 2 copies of Archangel Avacyn in the deck, and you don't see this in every Black-White Eldrazi deck, but I decided why not play Avacyn? There's only 15 creatures in the deck, but even if she's not, you know, protecting all your dudes, she's still a 5-mana 4/4 flash, flying, vigilance, just incredible stats on her. She functions as removal sometimes, that's great. Sometimes she's just like a control-ish creature, you know, flash her in the end of your opponent's turn, start banging in for 4. And you can do that and remain defensive with her. Vigilance is really good in this format. I mean, you can swing with her if you want to, and still block an Ojutai if that's what you got to do next turn. It's a fantastic card. And the last creature in the deck is just 1 copy of Linvala the Preserver. I saw more than one deck at the Pro Tour trying to just displace Linvala for value, and doing really good at it, by the way. I saw a lot of decks be able to play Linvala when they're at like 17 and the opponent's at 20. I mean, at that point, that's amazing. You know, you go up to 22, you get a 3/3 flyer and a 5/5 flyer. That's crazy. And obviously displacing this is really one of the best displacement targets in the format. If you happen to dip below their life total, just displace and volley. You gain 5 life. Pretty awesome. So they have to deal a bunch of damage to you to end up winning. And not that, but the best part of it is that you get an extra creature out of it. That's insane. I mean, you can displace this. When you play it, you'll get the 3/3 flyer, and then you can displace it, get a 3/3 flyer, and just keep doing this for as long as you have, fewer creatures than your opponent. So Linvala's been awesome and a great finish. I mean, even if you're just playing her as a 5/5 flyer, she's still a 5/5 flyer, which is decent in this format. Into the spells here, and you'll see that we act kind of like a control deck. We play a ton of main deck removal in here because we want to control the early game, blow dudes away, do some hand disruption if that's what we're into, and then in the mid game sort of start taking control. The deck has a lot of plays, by the way. I've already discussed, Declaration of Stone into Wasteland Strangler and stuff like that. But the deck has a lot of different ways that it can play in the early game. So we'll start with 3 Transgress the Mind, because Transgress the Mind on turn 2 will often help you set up for how you're going to play the rest of the game. A lot of people don't talk about this, but just getting the information, the look at your opponent's hand on turn 2, is key, honestly, to a card like this, or even Duress, First or second turn, looking at your opponent's hand and game planning for the rest of the game is incredibly important. Not only that, but with Transgress, you get to exile the best thing in their hand. Sometimes you get a Planeswalker, you can get an Avacyn, you get all kinds of stuff. With the Transgress the Mind in this format, I already said good cards start at 4. For the most part. So there's just so much amazing junk that you can grab with a Transgress, and I wouldn't mind playing 4. This works well with Wasteland Strangler also, I should point that out. I mean, just Transgress is one of my favorite cards in the format right now. Great 2-drop, especially in a format that's a little slower than usual, and this just gives us a 2-mana way to exile things out of their hand, and we also have a 2-mana way to exile things off the board. So on turn 2, we have a good chance of being able to get rid of a card forever, whether it's on the board or in their hand. I also think that's important. As far as 2-mana removal goes, let's go to the graphic for that, because I think that's really important, and we're playing a healthy chunk of it. 7 pieces in all. There's 3 copies of Grasp of Darkness, 2 copies of Ultimate Price, and 2 copies of Declaration in Stone. Declaration of Stone, obviously a good piece in this format, and I think it may pick up a little bit of steam with tokens winning the Pro Tour, because more people are going to be playing Hangerback Walkers. Ostensibly, that's the angle I'm taking on it. And Hangerback Walker is still seeing, we see the red-white, or the mono-red, Eldrazi deck is fairly popular on mtgo and at FNMs and stuff. And Declaration is pretty good against it because it can nail that 5 toughness guy that's kind of a jerk, and also Hangerback Walker too. So Declaration, not bad at all. It's always great to have unconditional removal, but the fact that it's sorcery speed and it gives them a way of drawing a card does kind of suck, but I'm willing to make the trade to have unconditional removal at 2 mana. As far as Ultimate Price goes, this is the least reliable piece in the deck, and that's why I'm only playing 2, but it can still hit an amazing array of things. It can hit Avacyn, it can hit Kalidas, it can hit Jace, and it can hit Sylvan Advocate, it can hit a bunch of stuff in this format right now that I haven't even mentioned there. Just a ton of creatures. And Ultimate Price is just, when it does hit a creature, it's technically the best removal in the deck. As far as Grasp of Darkness goes, this is a really consistent piece of removal, and yeah, it costed 2 black mana, but we can bake 2 black mana on turn 2 fairly easily. We got a very consistent mana base in the deck. I like playing only 2 colors in this format, really a way to streamline your mana base and make it where you can get those 2 of the same color on turn 2 very easily. But Grasp of Darkness, just very consistent removal, This is another instant speed way of taking out Avacyn. We've got a few ways of doing that. We need as many as possible, to be honest with you. This can just kill almost anything that they play in the first couple of turns, and is just a premium piece of removal in the format, probably in some ways the best in the deck. We've also got some 3-mana removal that does a lot of stuff for us, so I'll go to one more graphic and show you that. We've got 2 copies of Ruinous Path in the deck, 1 copy of Anguished Unmaking, and 1 copy of Stasis Snare. Anguished Unmaking and Stasis Snare are also instant speed ways of taking out Avacyn. That's important. But these can also both take out Ormondal when Westfell Abbey transforms. That is incredibly important in this format, and I like to have a couple of different ways of doing that. That's very important. We've got more of Stasis Snare in the sideboard. I really want instant speed ways of taking out Ormondal when he shows up, because he is a jerk. As far as Ruinous Path goes, there's a lot of Planeswalkers in this format. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I mean, there were times at the Pro Tour where I was watching streams and I saw 3 Planeswalkers on the board at the same time, these like Esper control decks. So Ruinous Path, I think, is fairly important. Oh, not to mention green-white tokens, the deck that won the Pro Tour. That plays a couple of different planeswalkers too. So Ruinous Path can not only take out important creatures, that's a thing the card does. It can also kill planeswalkers, and late in the game, it really can't be denied that it is significant that it can make a guy for us too. A fairly big guy, so love Ruinous Path in this format right now. I want to draw some cards, because, you know, we're acting like a control deck. I want to get some card advantage here. We're playing 3 copies of Read the Bones to that effect, and it's pretty cut and dry. You know, if we're playing 3 colors, I'd probably play Painful Truths, but really like Read the Bones in this format, and in most formats too. Read the Bones is always at least a solid card. It generates card advantage. There's card selection on it. Scry is always good. Scry 2 is especially good. So for 3 mana, there's really not much more you can ask for. The card advantage it provides is absolutely worth that life loss, and it's probably the best card advantage thing we could play in this deck. I am going to play 1 copy of Languish in the main deck here, and I know it's weird. You don't want to languish away your own Thought-Knot Seers or Eldrazi Displacers, but there are a ton of decks in the format right now that fill out their board presence much faster than we could ever hope to. You know, there's decks like Cryptolith Rites, Aristocrats, that thing that LSV was playing at the Pro Tour. There's White Humans, you know, mono white humans, splash of color sometimes. There's tokens, whether it's green, white, or other colors. So there are decks that fill out their board quickly and will overwhelm us if we can't get to a Languish. You know, on turn 4 we can Languish, and then just start going about our business. You know, dropping our creatures, displacing things for value, and overwhelming them, hopefully, in the long run. Just Languish is one of the best cards in the format. Seriously, it really is right now. And I wouldn't want to pass up the opportunity to main deck it, especially when it's so good against so much right now. And to finish off the deck, I'm going to play 2 copies of Sorin Grim Nemesis. Just the card does everything we want it to do. It can often get us back in the game if we're lagging behind by using its negative X ability, blow something away, gain us some life. That's good. It can also just win the game by itself with its +1 ability, and the worst thing its +1's ever going to be is card advantage. So he gets to, you know, if all you do is sit there and +1 him, he'll get to his ultimate fairly fast too, and his ultimate is actually pretty good. So I just like everything about Sorin. I think he's a great in-game piece, and you know, if things like Avacyn or even Linvala aren't quite doing it for us, Sorin can just kind of sit back behind all of our big flying blockers and just win the game through sort of inevitability for us. So I love Sorin in this format. 25 lands in the deck, which is a fairly high land count. You know, we're playing 5 and 6 drops. A good bit of them in the deck, so I wanted to play a few more lands. We're also kind of making 3 colors in the deck. That's why we're playing, you know, obviously Caves of Koilos is a no-brainer anyway, but it helps us sort of play Westvale Abbey. You know, we can cast Eldrazi and activate Eldrazi with Westvale Abbey. That's a reason to play it. And if we happen to be able to either get the 5 creatures on the board or use itself to make the 5 creatures and, you know, sacrifice them, then Ormondal is just insane. Like, Ormondal wins the game by himself kind of a lot. You transform into Ormondal and they just scoop. So just another way of winning the game, which the deck kind of has a lot of ways of, and we are playing Secure the Waste in the board, again I'll say that, to sort of help make this work against decks that it really wants to work against. Here's our sideboard right here, and I actually think the sideboard is insanely important. I've done some tweaking since the Pro Tour to sort of, you know, go along with what I think more people will be playing. Now there's 3 copies of Duress that could be in the main deck. I feel like you could main deck 2 copies of Duress and be pretty fine with that. You'd have to take out some removal, but that might be okay. It depends on your local meta. I feel like if there's more Planeswalkers and more control type decks, then Duress is definitely main deckable. Just I've always loved the card. It does not have to be relegated to the sideboard. I've done it here because I feel like more F&M players are going to run up against more creatures. So I've done more removal in the main, although Duress is still a fantastic card. There's another copy of Transgress the Mind in there to fill out a playset against, again, control, ramp decks, for instance. This can, lately I've been using this to nab Goggles an awful lot, so that's good. Hallowed Moonlight, obviously, against the Coco decks, which are all over the place, whether it's Bant, the most popular one, or Jund. That's a big one now. Abzan Company, also a big deck, so collected companies everywhere. Oh, Green-Black Aristocrats, so collected companies everywhere. Hallowed Moonlight's not bad at all. Infinite Obliteration against the ramp decks, obviously, and it can do work against other decks, too. Virulent Plague against the tokens decks that might be even more of a thing in this format. We don't really generate tokens, we don't care. Stasis Snare again against mostly Ormondal, but also Instant Speed Answer for Avacyn if they're running a bunch of those. Kalidas, just really good against Green-Black Aristocrats, fantastic against that deck. He can sometimes, quote-unquote, blank the board against white aggro. I said that in a video the other day, and people were like, what do you mean? Basically, if they have like 2 power guys on the board and they swing in and you have a Kalitas, That more or less blanks all the damage that they're going to do. You can block, gain 3 life, and they can deal 2 damage with a creature. You're just up 1 life. So they won't even attack in that situation. You've basically blanked out attacks with 1 Kalatas. So just really good creature, and he can sometimes get big over the course of the game. We're playing a ton of removal in the deck, so if we just remove a couple other creatures, eat the zombies, Kalitas can win the game by himself, but he's mostly a specialized tool against a couple of decks in the format, notably green-black aristocrats. We're packing 1 more Languish in the sideboard here, just because I think that's a wise decision, and then Secure the Waste, obviously, is not only in there to work with Ormondal and Westvale Abbey, but also just because it's Secure the Waste, man. It's it's definitely a card that if you're playing against a deck, you can find an opening for a big Secure the Waste. At the end of their turn or during their combat step. Secure the Waste is just a fine card. It can function as removal. It can function as, I'll play this at the end of your turn and swing for $1 million when I untap them on my turn, So I just love Secure the Waste. It might have a spot in the main. I just don't know if it's overall, synergistic enough with what we're doing in the main. Here's your power rankings here. A final score of 69 for the deck, which is very competitive and very playable. The deck does fairly well against a lot of decks in the format. Just fine mid-range deck with a lot of great removal pieces. The deck can either be proactive or reactive, Early in the game, Transgress the Mind is a very proactive card, whereas all of our 2 and 3 mana removal is very reactive. Also, when we play our creatures, depends on sort of what we're playing. So the deck is fairly skill intensive, yes, but it's just got a lot of really good plays at all mana costs, from 2 on up to 6. So we've got a lot of the better cards in the format in this deck right here. And it has decent game against a lot of stuff. I've been proxying up and playing with these Pro Tour decks and stuff. And the deck has decent game against them, and a deck very much like this one ended up in the top 8 of, I think it was Stars of the Open Baltimore, which was the first season, or the first tournament of the season. So the deck does have legs and can do fairly well in, big money tournaments, or at least big name tournaments, not necessarily big money. But in any case, I've really, really enjoyed playing with the deck. I think it's got a lot of tricks up its sleeve, a lot of premium cards. So shuffle this one up, proxy it up, whatever you do, take it up to F&M, and let me know how you do with it, because I have really, really liked this one, guys. Overall, the deck is going to cost you about $265 on TCG Player. It could cost you as little as $250 or as much as $300, but my cart rang up to $265. So, not a terrible price when you consider, again, that's less than a playset of Jace's. That's sort of the standard I'm going by now. Playset of Jace's rings up about $350 on TCG Player. This is way less than that and is a very competitive deck in the format. So check it out. Again, let me know how you feel, because this is a great deck, I feel like. Well, that's all I got for this deck, and again, it's probably pretty good, but we're only as good as your latest video, so what's coming up next? I've talked a lot about this. Next budget video is going to be actually end up being a double deck tag, and that is Devil Impact Trimmers. I've had a couple of people say, that sounds cool. What the hell is that? Well, that's basically Impact Trimmers with these new Devil token generator things. And I found a couple of ways to actually make that work. One of which is Pyromancer's Goggles, but that's going to be the competitive version of the deck tech. There are ways to make the deck on a budget, make it fun, and make it fairly good. So check that out next time. And I've got a couple of other things I want to discuss with you. I've got Red-White Midrange coming up very soon. After that, I think Red-White Midrange also shaping up to be fairly good. And I had a couple of questions for you real quick that I'm going to try to get out fast here. Ever since the Pro Tour, I've looked at LSV's Green-Black Aristocrats deck with Cryptolith Rites, and I've been looking obviously at John Finkel's Seasons Past deck. Now, here's an idea. What if the Cryptolith Rites Aristocrats deck ran Seasons Past at the top of its curve? I know it sounds crazy, but Cryptolith Rite decks can make it to 6 mana very easily. And this could make it to where you can play Seasons Past, replenish your hand with all the creatures you sacrifice, play them again and get more damage off of Zulaport Cutthroat, and possibly more damage off of Nantuko Husk. So, does that sound viable? Let me know how you feel about that. And the last thing I want to bring up is I've noticed the response to the lore reading has been very, very good. I appreciate your support on that. Not a very high view count or anything, but the people that have watched it and commented have seemed to really enjoy this, despite a small amount of mic popping, mostly close to the beginning there. But I noticed a lot of you have really, really enjoyed that, so I'm going to try to do a couple of more of those with the Shadows over Innistrad lore, and maybe a couple more when Eldritch Moon comes out too, so look forward to that. That is actually all I have for now. If you enjoyed the content, like it, share it, comment on it, and subscribe to the channel, Strictly Better MTG. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching, my wizards.